The old man didn't say much. He just worked, his hands moving with a forgotten rhythm, fixing things the modern world had given up on. But when a retired general, visiting the garage, saw the strange knotted scar on the mechanic's forearm, the entire room went silent. Because that wasn't just a scar. It was a map to a place no one was supposed to survive. The garage, known simply as Silas's, was an anomaly. Tucked away at the end of a forgotten industrial road, it was a place where time seemed to slow down. Here, carburetors were still rebuilt by hand, and engines were diagnosed by ear, not by a computer spitting out codes. Silas was its heart and soul, a man who seemed as much a part of the old brick and steel as the very tools he wielded. He was a fixture, a ghost from a bygone era of American engineering. Most people drove past without a second glance. Most people didn't know what they were missing. "Hey!" Caleb's voice cuts through the air. "You the guy?" The engine whisperer or whatever. He scans the cluttered garage with a look of undisguised disdain. "Place looks like a tetanus factory. You sure you're open?" Silas slowly straightens up, his back creaking softly. He picks up a clean-worn rag from his workbench and methodically wipes his hands, his gaze level. He doesn't speak. He just waits, a mountain of patience against a tide of youthful arrogance. Caleb scoffs, running a hand through his perfect hair. "Look, I don't have all day. My car's making a noise. A real technician couldn't figure it out, said it was old school, whatever that means. He sent me to you. Said you were the only one left who might get it." He tosses a sleek key fob onto the workbench. It lands with a plastic clatter that feels alien in the world of heavy steel. "And listen," Caleb adds, pointing a finger at Silas. "Don't scratch it. The paint job on this thing is worth more than this entire shed." Silas's expression doesn't change. Not a flicker of anger, not a hint of insult. He simply picks up the key fob, his calloused fingers dwarfing the small device. He walks toward the Lamborghini, his worn boots crunching softly on the concrete floor. He circles the car once, not in admiration, but in assessment, like a wolf studying a strange beast that has wandered into its territory. He slides into the driver's seat, the old fabric of his overalls a stark contrast to the plush leather interior. He turns the key. The engine barks to life. Silas doesn't look at the dashboard, doesn't check the gauges. He closes his eyes. He leans his head back slightly, listening. His face is a mask of deep concentration, a physician listening for the faintest murmur of a failing heart. Caleb taps his foot, crossing his arms. "What? Is it singing you a lullaby? You going to tell me what's wrong with it, or are we just going to sit here and meditate?" Silas turns the engine off. The sudden silence is deafening. He pulls the key out and gets out of the car. "It's a lifter tick," he says, his voice raspy from disuse. "Number 7 cylinder. Oil pressure is intermittent to the valve train." Caleb lets out a short, incredulous laugh. "A lifter tick? You got that from listening. You didn't even plug in a diagnostic tool." "Don't need one," Silas says, walking back to his workbench. "Some things you just have to listen to." Just then, an old but immaculately maintained Ford F-150 pulls into the lot. It parks quietly, respectfully, a few feet from the garish Lamborghini. The man who gets out is General Harding. He's the same age as Silas, but carries himself with the unwavering posture of a lifelong military man. His eyes are sharp, his jaw is set, and his presence commands an unspoken authority. He gives Caleb and his bright yellow car a brief dismissive glance before his eyes find Silas. "Silas," the general says, his voice warm and familiar. "Got my rig ready to go?" "Just about, General," Silas murmurs, not looking up from where he's now selecting a wrench. "Fine-tuning the ignition coil. Won't be a minute." General Harding nods, then walks over to an old coffee pot simmering in the corner, a permanent fixture in the garage. He pours a cup of thick black coffee into a chipped ceramic mug and leans against a support beam, content to watch. Caleb, feeling ignored and increasingly irritated by the interruption, huffs. So? Are you going to fix it or what? I have places to be. Silas turns back to the Lamborghini. To get a better angle on the engine, he has to lean deep into the engine bay. As he reaches for a component, the sleeve of his worn overalls catches on a latch and pulls back, exposing his forearm under the harsh fluorescent light of the garage. And that's when everything changes. On his forearm is a scar. But it's not a normal scar. It's not a clean surgical line or the jagged mark of a simple accident. It's a chaotic, raised lattice of flesh, a keloid network that looks less like a wound and more like a relief map of some hellish landscape. It's a ghostly imprint of a wire or a thin cable that had once been wrapped so tight it had fused with the skin, leaving behind a story of unimaginable pressure and pain. General Harding freezes. The coffee mug slips from his hand, shattering on the concrete floor. The sound echoes in the suddenly silent garage. The general's face, moments before relaxed and friendly, drains of all color. His eyes are locked on the scar, his jaw slack with disbelief. He takes a staggering step forward, his mind reeling back through 50 years of buried memories. His voice, when it comes, is a choked, strangled whisper, barely audible. Snake Valley, 71, he breathes. My God, is that... Silas straightens up slowly, pulling his sleeve back down, but it's too late. For the first time, he looks directly into the general's eyes. There's no surprise in his expression, only a deep, weary resignation. After a long, heavy moment, he gives a single, almost imperceptible nod. General, he says, his voice a low rumble of acknowledgement. The only sound is the frantic ticking of the cooling Lamborghini engine. Caleb looks back and forth between the two old men, his arrogance finally giving way to a profound confusion. What's going on here? What valley? It's just a scar. General Harding doesn't hear him. He's staring at Silas as if seeing a ghost. They listed you as lost, the general says, his voice trembling with a mixture of awe and grief. No one made it out of that valley, Silas. No one. We held a memorial. We thought you were gone. Silas turns his gaze to the greasy rag in his hand, as if the entire history of the world is written in its fibers. Came back a different way, General, he says quietly. The general finally turns his gaze on Caleb, but he isn't really seeing him. He's seeing a ghost, a legend he thought had been buried in the jungle decades ago. That isn't a scar, son, he says, his voice shaking with the weight of the story he is about to unleash. That is a promise. It's a battlefield commission. It's the price of survival when all hope is lost. He turns back to Silas, his eyes pleading for confirmation, for reality. We sent a 6-man team in, long-range recon, a rescue op for a downed pilot. It was a trap. The valley was a meat grinder. We lost radio contact within the first hour. The official report said the team was wiped out. No survivors. He takes another step closer to Silas. You were the comms specialist on that team, weren't you? They called you Ghostwire because you could make a radio sing in a hurricane. When the ambush hit and the team was scattered, you were the only one who knew the way out in the dark. Caleb stands frozen, the story washing over him, the words painting a picture his privileged life could never have prepared him for. The greasy, silent old man in front of him was starting to transform into someone else entirely. The after-action reports, the ones they buried, the general continues, his voice growing stronger, fueled by memory. Whispers from a local informant said one man made it out, said he carried 2 wounded men on his back for 3 days, said he fought off patrols with a captured rifle. And it was said that when his radio was destroyed, he used the internal wiring to stitch a shrapnel wound in his own arm to stop himself from bleeding out. He twisted it tight, using it as a field tourniquet and suture, all in one. The general points a trembling finger at Silas's arm. That scar. It's the wire, the ghost wire. Caleb's mouth is dry. His heart is hammering in his chest. He looks from the general's awestruck face to Silas's quiet, unassuming form. He looks at the arm that had been hidden under a dirty sleeve, and he finally understands. The man he had called Grandpa, the man he had threatened over a paint job, was a legend, a ghost. The mission was black ops, the general says, his voice now filled with a righteous anger at the injustice of it all. It was denied. The men who died there got no medals, no public funerals. Their names were just erased, and the survivors, if there were any, were ordered to disappear, to become ghosts. Silas, you were more than a soldier. You were a myth they sent into the jungle. And then, you vanished. Silas finishes wiping his hands and sets the rag down. He slowly closes the hood of the Lamborghini. The click of the latch is the only sound. Myths don't fix cars, General, he says, his voice heavy. Old men do. A wave of hot, suffocating shame washes over Caleb. He feels small, insignificant, his expensive car suddenly looking cheap and foolish. He stumbles for words, his voice cracking. I'm so sorry, he stammers, looking at Silas, truly seeing him for the first time. I didn't know. I'm an idiot. Silas finally turns his full attention to the boy. There is no anger in his eyes. No, I told you so. Just a profound, bone-deep weariness. No one ever knows, son, he says. That's the point. Some scars aren't meant to be seen. They are stories written in flesh and bone, reminders of a price paid in silence. True heroes don't wear capes or drive fancy cars. Sometimes they just wear greasy overalls and carry the weight of a world no one else can see. They are the silent guardians, the forgotten legends living among us, asking for nothing. All they require is that we occasionally look past the surface and listen for the stories told in the quiet. So now I ask you, have you ever met a Silas? A quiet hero hiding in plain sight? Share their name, their story, in the comments below. Let the world know who they were and what they did. And if you believe these stories need to be told, subscribe to Untold Legacies. Help us ensure that no hero is ever truly forgotten. We'll see you in the next one.